So today we're going to be talking all about all the information you need to know for the final project for the course. And just as a quick note, on the course spreadsheet here, there's a URL that goes to the GitHub repo that I'm about to talk about. So that's where you'll go to that. And everyone will be, all the instructions and everything are on the GitHub repo, so there are no slides for today. I'm literally just reading everything on that repo, and there's a lot of information there. Both so that I'm sure that I haven't forgotten to tell you anything, and also as a reference for you, when you go to look at it, you're absolutely certain that everything is there. And just like the assignments, I do like to read through it just so I can make sure that, oh, I didn't leave the due date as 2024 or something like that, just to know that everything is there. So if I go over here, this is the GitHub repo. It's a public repo, and it's called COMP4300_project. And as I said, the URL is on the spreadsheet. And what we're going to do today is I'm going to go through all of these 4 different folders here because each of them means something different. And then at the end, I'll go through the entire, I say at the end, but like 20 minutes from now probably, I'll go through the entire project specification, absolutely everything that you have to do. So just a hand up if you have used GitHub before. Okay, pretty much everybody, that's good. Because that's the only way you can do the project. So if you haven't used it, get using it, I guess. You're going to use it at work. I was watching Jonathan Blow, who is a game programmer, and on his Twitch stream where he live programs his games, he was still using SVN. And I thought that was awesome because I was a very late adapter to Git, and I basically just use Git as like push and pull. I don't do branches or any complicated stuff like that. So if all you do is pull, commit, and push, you're fine for this project. You don't need to learn any of the complex functionality. But you'll discuss how you use Git amongst your group, of course. So the very first thing that I want to point out is just how easy this is going to be to do. So in this GitHub repository, there are a few different folders down here, and that is where you're going to put stuff. But I'm not going to add you to this repo, right? You're going to actually make a copy of this repo. And the cool thing is GitHub has these things called template repositories. And so this is one of those template repositories. And what that does is it introduces this button over here on the right, which says use this template. So if you click this and you click create new repository, then this little thing comes up where you just give it your repository name, and you can either name that like the name of your game or COMP4300 project, just something that makes a little bit of sense, a short description, and then the most important thing is that you click this and you make it private. Okay, so you are going to make your repository private, and then if you hit create repository, then whoever's GitHub was logged in when they did that is going to be the owner of that repo. And then you will add all of your project members as collaborators on that project. And then it's all set up and it's done, and that's all you need to do. It's like 3 clicks. It couldn't be easier. I love these template repositories for that purpose. What I'm going to do now is I found out that if I zoom in far enough, this right bar over here actually disappears. So let's go ahead and do that just so this is as big as possible for the video and for you viewing here. Okay, so there's a few different folders here. If you see a date on the folder, that's the due date of the thing that goes in that folder. It couldn't be easier, okay? So if you're wondering what the due date is, you don't even need to leave the GitHub repository. So the project proposal is going to be due in just over 2 weeks from now. It's crazy to think that November is 2 weeks away, but it sneaks up on you. Then there's the project demo, which is going to be due on the 6th. And I believe the 6th is right before final exams start. Yeah, it's like 2 days before final exams start. And then the final project itself is going to be due on the 17th. And the 17th is the day after final exams end. And I try and make this project due as late as possible while still giving myself enough time to physically be able to mark 20 projects. And that's going to take me like 2 or 3 days, and we have an internal department deadline for actually like submitting grades. And so that's what I've done. I've made this deadline as late as I possibly can. And the one piece of feedback I always get is like, yeah, but we have exams, so it's due right after exams. It's like, okay, I could make it due before exams. Would that be a better solution for you, right? So it's just as much time as I can possibly give you. And it turns out that it's approximately, if I look at when assignment 4 is due, so assignment 4 is due on the 18th of November, and this is due on the 17th of December. So between the end of assignment 4 and the due date of the project, you have almost exactly 1 month. That's the amount of time that I have to give you. But as we will see, a lot of the project is already done for you in the assignments, right? You're not starting from scratch for the project. About maybe a third to a half of the programming is you can just take assignment 4, copy and paste it, and start working on the project from there. So you don't have to do everything from scratch. It's not as much work as it seems, but it still is quite a bit of work. Down here, so in the README, I have some instructions here. So I'll just go through these. So it says, click the Use This Template green button in the top right, create a new private repository from this template, add these 2 users as collaborators. So this is me, this is the TA. And we're not going to be doing anything to your repo other than looking at it when the due dates are there. I don't have time to like spy on you and who made commits when and try and track everyone's stuff. I know that sometimes, for example, it is good if people make their own commits. So then at the end, if anyone accuses you of not having done enough work, that we could actually see that you were pushing code to the repo. But I am aware that sometimes one of your group members will send you something over Dropbox or email or Google Drive, and then you'll implement it and you'll upload it. But we're not spying on your GitHub. That's just how we mark it. So you will actually not be submitting anything via D2L except the repo URL. So your project is just on this GitHub, and on the due date, we're going to go in and check it. Then what you do is you submit the URL that you created to project GitHub repo URL, and that will be, if it's not there already, I can't remember, there'll be a D2L Brightspace assignment Dropbox where you're just making a text submission, which is this URL. That's it. We will also get an email notification when you add us to the repo. So we'll get it through the email, but it's just nice to have them all there in case there's any mix-ups at the end. Or in case 2 people from the same group created a repo, that happens sometimes. But we will take whatever is submitted to the Brightspace shell as gospel. So make sure that only one of you creates the repo and only one of you submits the URL so that we don't have duplicates of the same project. Then click the pencil icon in the top right of this section. That's right here. It'll be under my face in the video. And edit your readme.md file. So if you've never used GitHub before, what you see here is Markdown for the readme file. And then you're going to edit this so that you just erase all of this stuff, put in your name, student ID, and email for each project. As things are due, so for example, the demo, the trailer, and the project presentation, you'll put the URLs for those right here on the front page, so I don't have to dig through any other directories in your repo. And then no matter how simple your setup is for your project, even if it's just like the assignments where it's double-click the Visual Studio file and hit compile and run, I still want those instructions to be here. For example, sometimes there are some groups that like everyone in the group uses Linux and they did some specific thing. Please, if you can, try and test your final project on Windows in Visual Studio before the final submission, just in case on Mac and Linux sometimes there will be, the compiler difference will be like, oh, you don't need to actually include this library in order to use this math function. But on Windows you do. So just make sure that you at least try it on Windows before you submit it. And maybe put a screenshot here if you want. And this is just how GitHub repos work. Like on the front page, typically you list who did it, a little screenshot of it, the URL to any videos about it. This is also sort of for your own benefit to get used to using this. And just as a demo of that, if I just click edit this file, and then I come down here, now this is a bit mangled because I'm zoomed in a lot, but any README file in the GitHub repo, you can actually edit right in GitHub. So you don't need to like clone this and then push it in order to make changes to this. You will just come in here, and the very first thing you do is delete that, because I don't need that anymore. And then I would say Dave Churchill, D Churchill, my whatever my ancient student number is, etc. And then down here, I believe somewhere, yeah, there's a commit changes button. You can do all of that right in the browser. So that's really easy to do. I don't want to save any of those changes. And so that is the front page. And that's what you have to do for that. All right, so we'll just go from top to bottom here. And I'll start with the proposal. So the proposal, inside this directory, there again is a readme.md file. So that's going to be markup. And for the proposal, you are just going to edit this. And it's just going to live in the GitHub repo. So you'll use Markdown for that. The only additional files that you should ever put in this directory, so for example, don't write your proposal as a PDF or a PowerPoint or a text file or a Word document and then upload that. All the text should just be in this README file, okay? The only thing you should add to this directory is if you want to add any images or diagrams or concept art or anything like that, if you want to, they can go in this directory, but they are not required as part of the proposal. So, right here, this says, edit this file to contain your project proposal. Use proper Markdown formatting. If you've never used a Markdown, it's super easy. Like an asterisk means it's a list item. You know, it's all there in the tutorial in GitHub. Your proposal will be reviewed to determine whether it is quote unquote enough work or too much work for the scope of this course. So I don't think that there are any good ideas for games or bad ideas for games. I just want to know that your project is within scope for the course. Like, for example, I don't want anyone to even think about networking for this project, like multiplayer games and stuff like that. You're not building some crazy dragon-based MMORPG with all of these features. You are just making a single-player game, right? Maybe if you really want some split-screen action or something like that, you can do that. But any multiplayer nonsense all has to be completely local on the same machine. So that's what we'll be reviewing it for. Mainly is to see, is it enough work to be considered a final project? And is it too much work that I think it's not going to be able to be done in time? Also keep in mind that regardless of the size of your group for the final project, if it's one person or up to 4 people, we are expecting the same amount of work to be done in total, okay? So just because you have 2 people in the group, just realize that you chose that, okay? And you chose to do twice as much work. Now, it might not exactly equal out to be twice as much work, you know. There is some overhead in having to deal with other people. I'll get into all of that in a little bit. But just realize that if you come to me at the due date and say, hey, I chose this to do myself, I should get a bunch of bonus credit or something, absolutely not, right? The only thing that I will change about, like, in terms of amount of work is that let's say we have a situation where the whole class groups splits up perfectly into so many groups of 4 and there's 1 person left out. In that case, I will add that person to a group of 4 to have 5, but I'll give you something extra to do because now you have 20% more manpower on that, right? So there will be no considerations taken for anything except medical emergencies. And I'm not talking about like I got the flu on day 4 and I was out for 2 days. I'm talking like something serious. This is like a final exam, right? If you miss the final project for any reason, the university has to get involved. It's like sick notes or letters or appeals or whatever. It's very serious. So treat this just like the serious final exam in any other course. So the project, again, you'll come up here, you'll click this button, and you'll just put all the Markdown in here. So it should describe the following information and be approximately 2 to 3 pages in length. And I say 2 to 3 pages, imagine it was a Word document, right? I know that different browsers had different resolutions and all that. So the game name, genre, overall theme, and main gameplay style. We'll get into these things in a bit more detail when I go over the project specification. You'll give examples of gameplay scenarios involving each of the game mechanics described below, and a list of extra features of the game which have not yet been completed in the assignment. And when I say described below, that's actually described in the project specification, not below in this particular website. So yeah, that's what you're putting here. And I am completely aware that what you say in your proposal may not be exactly what happens for your final project. And that is absolutely fine, right? What the proposal is it's more so, have you described the game in enough detail? Is that game enough work? And most importantly, have you formed your groups and made this first milestone deadline of the project proposal itself? Because if I did not have this project proposal, you would all be looking for group members on December 13th, right? It's just how it happens. I did way more group work than you'll ever do. Trust me, I know what it's like to be a student. If I gave you 6 months to do this project, you'd still all start at 5 months and 2 weeks from now. Like, it doesn't matter how much time I give you. What I need to do is that this milestone-based stuff is just to sort of keep you on track so that you're not all hit with this huge bomb of work during final exams that will not be great. So if at all possible, when you come to look at these due dates, make sure you're not end loading everything. And when I get into the project specification, you can actually front load a bunch of this stuff by doing it as bonus stuff in the assignments, if you want to. So for example, in the project specification, I'm going to go over stuff that we haven't done in assignments yet, but you could like do those things as bonus stuff in assignment 4 and double dip. So you could get bonus marks on assignment 4 and have part of your project done already, right? So that's why, like for assignment 4, I'll recommend doing the bonus for assignment 4 of making a level editor, because that's one of the big parts of the final project. And then you get that out of the way, you don't have to worry about that right at the end, and you get bonus marks for assignment 4 for that. Next is the demo. So the demo is due on sorry to scare anyone, December 6th. And so that's right before final exams. And what you're going to do is, the very first thing you do is you're going to copy and paste the checklist from the project specification into this section. And then you'll check off all the things that you have done for the demo, okay? So then when I open it up, I know, okay, these are the amount of things that they have done. And for the demo, I'm not sure if I have this written, I won't read it yet, but what I'm looking for is, since at the demo time, approximately half of that time for the project, or maybe 2/3 of the time for the project, have already passed, I'm looking for, have they completed that much of the project yet, right? I completely understand that some groups are, maybe some people in some groups are only taking 2 courses, so they're gonna wait for the final exam period to do a lot of the work for the project, which is fine. But I still have this milestone for the demo. I want to see approximately half of the project done. And when I say half of the project, I mean half of the new stuff, not half of the stuff you've already done in the assignments, okay? So that's what the demo is for. And now let's see what you have to do. So for the project initial demo, you must record a narrated 3 to 5 minute video showing your project progress so far. The following features must be presented in the demo. A functional level editor using IMGUI. It doesn't have to be 100% complete, but it should be about 90% complete. Like, you can still put finishing touches on it and stuff during the exam period for the final deadline, but it has to be able to create, load, and save levels, and that must be demoed in the video that you submit for the demo. So edit, create, save, and load a level. Most of the gameplay mechanics must be working. So record a few minutes of basic gameplay footage where you narrate the game mechanics being displayed. Don't waste any time with retrying things, failures, long stumbles in speech. Like, you can re-record this and edit it as much as you want. I have literally had demo videos where there was a compiler error and someone spent like 1.5 minutes of the demo video trying to compile the thing. I don't want to see that. Nobody wants to see that. This is your chance to look good. I don't know. Listen, my goal for the demo is to watch this video and give you 5 out of 5, or whatever it's worth, or 10 out of 10. I don't want to go look at your code. The only way that I'll look at the demo code is if it's grossly overdone or grossly underdone, right? If it screams that, okay, this person paid someone in Silicon Valley to make some AAA game for them, now I'm looking at the code. Or if you have literally nothing done, I'm also looking at the code. But, if you have some sort of bugs in your game where, okay, we can jump over the pipe, But if you land on the pipe, that crashes the game right now. We'll fix that later. Just don't show me the crash. It's fine, right? Don't do that for the final project, but for the demo, show me the things that are working, not the things that like, oh, when we will do this, we will. I don't want to hear that. I want to see what you have done. That's it, just what you have done. Pay more attention to any new mechanics you have implemented that are not present in the assignments. So I'm assuming that you have all submitted working assignment 3s and assignment 4s. And so axis aligned bounding boxes collisions, I don't want 2 minutes of the demo video to be about how you got collisions to work. That should already be there. Talk about the new stuff there. Okay, so this is your video. I don't know what's working or not, so cherry pick the best parts. If your project crashes sometimes, just don't show me the crashing, right? I will probably not be looking at the demo code unless something is either horribly broken or suspiciously overdone. All right. This folder is you are going to submit your code. So at the time that the demo is due, I want this folder to contain a snapshot of your project code at that moment, right? And after the demo is due, I don't want that to be edited at all, okay? So just a quick note. So what I recommend is when you go to work on the project, let's say you've already completed assignment 4, and now you're going to start working on the project. So you can take assignment 4 and then just copy and paste those directories, the source, the bin, the Visual Studio, copy and paste them into the final project directory. That's where it's going to go. And then you work on that there as your working copy. So that's the main repo, the main copy. And then when it comes time to submit the demo, just copy whatever you have from there into the demo folder. And so that way, if there is something grossly wrong or right about the demo, I can have a look at that. So the demo has to contain, in addition to the video, the bin directory. So this must contain a compiled game executable. So I want to be able to run the game. I don't want to have to myself open it up and compile it. I'll trust that you have compiled it correctly. Please contain a compiled version for Windows, if at all possible. It must contain any additional files that you need in your bin directory. So this means any of the assets that you use. So if you went out and you got, I don't know, maybe you took a bunch of assets from like Hollow Knight, or you made your own and you drew them all yourself, this is where they should be, right? It should have the same directory structure as the assignments, basically. Do not include any of the Visual Studio output debugging files, the PDB files, anything like that. And in a second, I'll get back to that. The source directory should contain all of your project code. Because this is the final project, I fully expect you to be adding different files. Like if you have a new scene, you're going to make a new scene.h, scene.cpp. Maybe you'll add new components or whatever you want to put in that source directory. You're allowed to create as many files as you want. You just have to then add them to the Visual Studio project as well, or the makefile. Then, even if all of your group members are on Linux somehow, please try and give me this so we can have an easier time marking it. The Visual Studio folder is the exact same as assignment 4. So basically, if you took assignment 4 as the basis for your project, you don't need to change that at all. Okay, it should just be working. But when Visual Studio compiles stuff, so when you download your zip file, it's like a few megabytes, if that, right? It's maybe like 2 megabytes, not including the assets. If you open up the Visual Studio file and you build your project, and then you right-click on the folder and you say properties, it might be like hundreds of megabytes. Where did all that stuff come from? It's mostly these temporary build files and debugging files that Visual Studio outputs. I don't want to see any of those in this repository. So in order to do that easier, I have created a gitignore file for you. Feel free to modify this, but the gitignore file, if you're not familiar with it, it's essentially a file that says any files that match these, this string or this regex don't include that in the actual submission. So for example, prerequisite files .d, compiled object files like .obj for Visual Studio, .o for the makefile, precompiled headers, shared objects, DLLs, any of that kind of stuff. Now in here, I do want you to submit me an exe file, so you may have to actually un-gitignore the exe file in order for that to be pushed. So, but this is just GitHub's sample C++ gitignore file. And so when you go to submit your demo, if you take away the size of the assets, like sounds and images are going to be many megabytes. You might have 50 megs of sounds, images, whatever. If you take away all of that, the whole submission be probably less than 2 megabytes. It should almost look like the size of the assignment files, okay? So if you're taking an hour to push stuff to Git, then it's probably because you're pushing these temporary files that are just way too big and clutter up everyone's stuff. So make sure you get that gitignore file proper so it doesn't include all of this. This setup is the exact same as your course assignments. You may start the project by copying an assignment into this directory and then editing it. The entire submission should be no more than a few megabytes at most without the temporary Visual Studio files. That's not including the assets, of course. Upon submission of the demo, please remove everything from this README except the completed features section above. So all of these directions, edit all of that out of this, and you're only going to have the completed checklist here, okay? All right, so that's the demo. The final project is going to be almost identical to that, except it's the final version, right? So you've had another 2 weeks. This is the final working version of the game. And so, yeah, so copy and paste from the project specification. That's the same as the demo. Each feature that has been completed must be demonstrated in the final project presentation video. I'll get to the details of that a little bit later. If the feature is not in the video, it's possible that I may miss it in my playthrough of the game and will be marked as incomplete. I'll get into more details of that when I get to that specification. But basically, I don't have time, unfortunately, to play through absolutely every single game and find every secret area and test every single mechanic. I will be playing every game, but I won't be playing them like maybe to completion, right? I like to get a feel for the game as well. There's like how it looks and there's how it feels and plays and stuff. So I do like to play every game, but just realize that because I can't manually test everything, anything that you don't demo in the final video may not be marked because I haven't seen it in the video. And then this is the exact same as the demo. It's just the final version instead of the demo version. And you should include a link to the YouTube video for your final presentation in the main README. So what this means is that when you have the video for the demo, the video for the final project, put them down here so all the videos are on the main page, so I don't need to dig into all of those folders. So that's that folder. And then finally is the final project specification. So this is going to take a while to read. At any point, please feel free to put your hand up and I will finish the section that I'm reading and then I'll answer that question. But it is also very likely that the question you had is about to be answered. Yes, question?
So I think you mentioned that we need to submit the Visual Studio files as well.
Yep.
For the final project. So for those who are using Mac, do you recommend shifting production to development to Windows, or how do you do that?
So the question, just repeating, is for if an entire group uses Mac or Linux and doesn't have access to Visual Studio, how do we actually, how do you gain access to Windows in order to do that sort of thing? If your entire group is using a Mac, so one of the good things about this is that all the code for this project should be completely cross-platform. So if some people in the group are using a Mac and some people are using Windows, there shouldn't be any problems in development. But if everyone is using Mac or everyone is using Linux, then maybe you can't submit that. So just let me know beforehand, and I'm not going to make you go out and buy a Windows laptop or anything like that. But it would be very helpful if at the very end, if one of you does have a Windows machine and can just make that Visual Studio thing for me, it would save a bit of time for the TA and myself. I don't think the TA has access to a Mac, for example, but might have access to Linux. That's a good question. As long as you come to me with enough notice and you're not doing this on the final day, then we can pretty much make anything work. Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to read through this whole thing. As you can tell by the size of this bar, it's going to take a little while, but it's good because then you can refer to this, and I can't dock you marks for stuff that were not in this. Like that's how I'm trying to be. I give you a very exact specification, so then you can work within those bounds. The final project for COMP4300 can be done in groups of up to 4 people, and I highly recommend 4 people for the group. I understand that students do not always enjoy working in groups for school projects, but the reality is this is how you will be working for the rest of your careers. And the ability to work with others in a reasonable manner is factored into the grade for this course. So part of the grade for the final project, it's not explicitly listed, right? It's not there in the marking scheme, but I am factoring in that it may be annoying for you to work with other people. But you know, the TLDR version of all this is get used to it, because that's going to be the rest of your life. Unless you somehow make some piece of software that you can sell to Bezos for $1 billion, you're going to be working in teams. And trust me when I say that throughout all of my experiences in programming, especially when collaborating with industry, talking to people in industry, people don't necessarily like working with the best programmers if they are difficult to get along with, right? You would much rather be easy to get along with in order to facilitate group work than to try and do everything yourself and have everyone hate you. Now that's sort of also like a life lesson, and it's easy to, like, sometimes maybe you are the best programmer in the group, and it's a little bit frustrating if people aren't pulling their weight or whatever. But if you really are the best person in the group, take it as a challenge to your, and I say best, I mean most experienced, you know, nobody's the best or whatever. Take that as a challenge to like try and prop the group up. Try and show them some things, right? If you are finishing your part of the group work early, maybe just help someone with their part of the group, etc. I understand it's annoying, but it has to be done. This is maybe the most important part of this entire document because it happens every year, and every year people don't listen to this and they come to me at the end in tears, and it sucks. If there are any problems with your group members not doing their fair share of the work, you must see me immediately so that we can work out a solution while there is still time to do so. My observation over the years is that 99% of the time this happens, it's due to simple miscommunication between group members and can be solved with a few emails. If you wait until the final week before the project is due to come with me with group-related issues, there is probably nothing that can be done at that point. Everyone in the class is an adult, and part of the grade for this group project is your ability to work well with others to accomplish a shared goal. So, every year, at least 2 groups come to me in the final week and say, we haven't seen this person in 2 weeks. Well, the time to tell me that was 2 weeks ago. There's just no other way for me to tell you, right? So, if you send an email or you schedule a group meeting and someone doesn't show up, it's not immediately the end of the world. People have lives, they go to work, they might have kids, whatever. But if it's a few days and they haven't responded, the latest you should wait is between, like, okay, give them a weekend, maybe they were on vacation. You should be talking to each other for the group project. But if you specifically ask, hey, is this feature done? We're all waiting on you. And it's been 3 days, just come to me, we'll work it out. It has never not been worked out. The only times that it has not been worked out is when there was some serious medical emergency and someone had to like fly back home for a funeral or something like that. But even that can be worked out by reshaping the scope of the course, etc. So I know earlier I said that the scope of the work wouldn't be changed, but in case of serious emergency, if one of your group members has to dip out for some reason that is unavoidable, then yes, I will make something happen, right? You're not going to be absolutely screwed just because one person didn't do their thing. That person will be either dealt with or talked to or disciplined or whatever it has to happen. But just please come to me. And it doesn't have to be this thing where you're feeling that you're like snitching on someone. I know sometimes group members are like friends and you don't want to have to like feel like you ratted them out or they're going to hate you forever. So here's what happens. If one or more people in the group you feel like they're really not pulling their weight, talk to other people in the group. If you agree, then send me an email, and what I will do is I will never reveal the source of the complaint. I'll email the entire group and say, an issue has been brought up. I'm giving you all the chance to explain your side of the story. I'm not just sending it to that one person who you had a problem with. And there's ways to mediate this that are very professional. We'll never get back to you. And this isn't like, oh, this guy refuses to use standard vector instead of standard map. Like, not that kind of stuff. You work that out, right? But it's like, no, this person like refuses to do this work, or they just haven't showed up or not doing it, those sorts of things. I promise you, like I said, the vast majority of the time, it's because just inexperience with group work. And like you didn't correctly specify who was supposed to do what. Or they thought the meeting was this day, there was a typo in the email. It's very rarely the case that someone wants to self-sabotage their own grade in a course. They are part of your group. You're working together, right? And I know some of you are kind of rolling your eyes with all this advice, you know all of this, but you would be surprised that I will bet $100 with anyone in this room, with everyone in this room, there'll be at least 2 groups, right? Last year it was 4 groups, but it's at least 2 groups every year. It's kind of nuts, but that's all you can do. Despite the length and feature scope of this project, which can look pretty scary, most of it has actually been done already in the class assignments. You are allowed to copy and paste all code done from your assignments as a starting point for this course project. In this way, almost every line of code that you write for assignment 3 or 4 are also being written for the project as well, okay? So keep in mind that, after assignment 4 is finished, yes, you only have a month to do the final project, but technically, if you've already started assignment 3, you've already started writing code for the final project. Now, I don't think I have anything explicitly saying this, but one of the hard parts about the group work is divvying up the work. So let's say, for example, when you have your first few group meetings, maybe I'll add something to the repo with a suggestion. No, I'll make a Brightspace post about this so that I'm sure everyone sees it. But what you should try and do is, however many people there are in the group, try and split up the project into that many sort of big sections, right? So for example, if there's 4 people in the group, maybe, this is just an example, I'm just ripping off the top of my head, I'll come up with something better for Brightspace, but there's like the assets, the level editor, the gameplay mechanics, the NPCs, something like that. You've identified 4 things. Now that's not all the things in the project, but maybe there's 8 things, maybe there's 10 things. But what you should do is you should not just assign one person to work on each of the 4 things. Because what happens if one person has to drop the course or they have to leave? So what I recommend is, no matter how much you split up the project in terms of who's going to do what, make sure that 2 people, at least 2 people, own every part of the project. That way, if someone pulls out, then or if someone is slacking, someone else knows that. So for example, if you told me to do, I don't know, the level editor, and I'm the only one working on the level editor, and no one is keeping me in check, and now it's a week before the project is due, and I haven't done anything on the level editor, it would have been good if 2 people were working on it so that they could keep each other in line for that. So just try and have at least 2 sets of eyes on each part of the project. But equally bad as one person doing each thing would be everyone trying to do each thing, because then you just get tangled on top of each other, and you trip over each other, and that's not a great idea either. One other tip is that it's very easy to fall into a very deep and long rabbit hole of the assets for the project. And so what some people try and do is say, oh, I've done a bunch of art or 3D modeling or pixel art or whatever. I'm going to do all the assets. Please don't do that. This is a game programming class. It's not a game dev class or an art class. I do not want a single person's responsibility to be only gathering assets, no matter how much work they are willing to spend on it. Okay? Spend less time on assets and more time on programming. It is shocking how good you can make your game look Like, I don't know about you, but like assignment 3 looks pretty good. And it's such simple assets. And like the more photorealistic that you want to like make your game look, the worse it'll turn out. Try and keep it simple. Simple art styles, 8-bit, 16-bit is fine. Don't get too deep down that rabbit hole, right? And okay. And also as part of the project, one thing you'll do is you'll specify who did what. And if one person only did assets, don't let that happen, okay? Because that person, even though they may have done a lot of work on assets, they won't be getting a full mark for the project because they didn't do any of the programming, and this is about the programming. So try and split the assets work among different people if possible. Okay. As soon as you've formed a group for the project and created a GitHub repo, please submit your group GitHub repo URL to this one. This must be done before the due date of the project proposal. All due dates are specified in the folder name in the repo root directory. Marking scheme. So here's how the final project will be graded. The project proposal will be worth 5% of the final project. That's not 5% of the year. This is 5% of the 100 total percent for the final project, which is worth however many percent of the final year. And that might seem like a lot, but this is an important deadline. It really is important that you get your group sorted before that deadline. You don't want to be waiting on that, because the longer you wait, the fewer people are available to form your groups. The project demo is worth 10%. So this is the short gameplay demo as a milestone to make sure that you're on track. If you are on track to finish the final project, I've given you 10% of the project for free. You already have 10% done as long as you're on track. Okay, this isn't a separate game or something extra. That's the project demo. As long as you got about half of it done, you're fine for the project demo. And yes, it's very rare that I give anything other than full marks, or it's usually for the project proposal, it's either 0 or 5%, as long as you've gotten enough written. But if you wrote, we're going to make Mega Man clone, like that's a 0 on the project proposal, right? If you left out a bunch of details, it's possible to get partial marks for that. But usually, for the project demo and the project proposal, the grade that you have for those things are like proportional to what I asked you to have done. Like if you don't have a lot done, if maybe you have half of what I asked you to have done for the project demo, you'll get 5 out of 10. But you should be scared if you get a 5 out of 10 on the demo, because it means you've got a long way to go for the final project, right? Then there's the final code and gameplay. So this is the main marking scheme for the project. So that's like all of the code for the project, as well as when I play the game, does the game actually work and do what you said that it will do? And then there's the project report video. So this is the main presentation video. When I finish this section, I'll get back to you. You're going to make a 15 to 20 minute video. At the end of this, I have all the details of that, which explains everything that you did for the project. That is extremely important. And trust me, I understand that it can be a little bit cringy sometimes to like record your own voice and have other people watch that. I know when I started recording my lectures, I hated the sound of my own voice. I don't think anyone ever likes that at first. But the only people who will be watching this are your group members who've already heard you talk and me. So don't worry, this is not going to be public unless you want it to be public and release it later publicly. And then for your own benefit, meaning that you can use this on your portfolio or on your resume or whatever, a short gameplay trailer, 2 to 3 minutes, like a trailer that you'd see for any other video game. But that's like kind of like your hype trailer for your game, and you're going to submit that at the end. You had a question?
I just wanted to quickly follow up on the assets.
Yep.
So would it be fine if we just use like all the open source assets for our game, or do we have to create them?
So the question was about the sourcing of the assets. Because this game is private and will not be released outside of this class, and it's for educational purposes, I really don't care where you get your assets from. You know, I've given you assets that are probably copyrighted, right? But we're not selling it. We're not promoting anything with it. We are just making a game with it. So for example, I'll get this a little bit later. If you just say like, oh, Super Metroid for the Super Nintendo is my favorite game of all time. I'm going to replicate that to the best of my ability. That's a perfect project idea. And you could go find their sprite sheets and turn them into the same format that we have for our course, and I would be perfectly happy with that. The only rule I have is that whether they were made by you or someone else, or you screenshotted them from a game, or you used AI to create them, just cite it, right? You can use AI all you want, LLMs, for the creation of these assets. I don't really care. Like I said, we're not taking jobs away from anyone when we make the game for this course. Important note. Okay, maybe this is the most important part. This is a game programming course. The final project game is the most important part of the course. Oh, I think this has changed actually since I introduced the exam. So whatever is on, I will change this, but whatever's on the syllabus is correct. So what did I say there? PDF. Okay, so the final project is actually worth 50%, not 60%. So just keep that in mind. So this should be 50%. Again, the course syllabus is gospel when it comes to grading schemes. I'm not allowed to change that. Also, the course syllabus states that you must pass the final project to pass this course. So what this means is you cannot just get 100% in all the assignments and the exams and then like not do the final project. Okay? So you can't just get 100 in everything up to the final project, get your 50, or then like maybe get 10% in the final project. That's not the way this course works. You must submit a project which has the vast majority of the required functionality completed. There is no other way to pass this course. So you must get at least a 50 in the final project in order to pass this course. I've checked with the department. I am allowed to do this. Do not sleep on the final project. Every year, 1 or 2 groups takes this warning very lightly and puts off doing the project until the last minute. The result of doing this will be you failing the course. Please take this project as seriously as any other final exam you have in any course. So just explicitly, outright telling you now that if the first time I hear from your group is in like the last week before the project saying that it's not going to get done, it's very difficult for me to have any empathy for you in that case. Well, I have empathy, it sucks. But in terms of me giving you any sort of leeway or extensions, it's just not possible, right? If you wait 2 months, a month and a half to tell me that there are issues, that's on you at that point. Unless there's some sort of serious medical thing, if your whole group was in an Uber and it went over a cliff. I hope that doesn't, I hope that doesn't happen. But it's gotta be something real bad for you to get an extension from me on this project, okay? I can't stress it enough, and I'll say it over and over again, that if there are any issues, you have to come to me early. Issues can be resolved if there is time to do so, okay? And if you come to me, and this has happened as well, if you come to me on the day the project is due, or some people submit the project, and then I contact them the next day when I'm grading it, I'm like, there's really nothing done here. This is like assignment 4. And they're like, oh yeah, we meant to email you. There's no meant to after the due date, okay? And like there's people chuckling and smiling. That last week of this course probably on average is like 20% of my workload for this course. Maybe 40%, including the grading. But dealing with those couple of groups who their student visa is on the line and they need this to graduate, and this has to do with like immigration now because they didn't it gets pretty serious. Please don't let that happen, right? I've heard every excuse. There's someone who, if they didn't pass this course, had to go serve in the military or something crazy, like in their home country. Like it was crazy, right? Please don't put me through that again. That like involves like the dean or like that was bad. So it's really not that bad. Just come to me when you start having the problems instead of at the end. I'm giving you as much time as I can to work on the project. It is due on the final day of exams. It's actually just after the final day of exams, just to give me just enough time to mark it before I'm required to submit your grades. There will be no extensions of the due date and no allowance for late submissions for the project unless there's a serious medical emergency. And even then, we will need to submit a formal request for a deferral for the university. So please treat this as a final exam, if possible. Okay, so here's the meat of this, what you actually came here for, what you actually have to do. This section details all of the required functionality for the game. It's an actual checklist in Markdown. If you put an X inside the brackets, it will check it, and then you can use that as your checklist going forward. You don't need to have a separate Google Doc or whatever. It'll just all be in the GitHub repo. So, the game overview must be implemented using ECS in C++, using only the SFML in IMGUI libraries. So you can't use some sort of physics library like Box2D or anything like that. The only exception I have ever made to this was someone wanted to use a JSON library so they could store their quest data in JSON, which was completely reasonable, and I allowed them to do that. You may use any course code already written for assignments as the basis, that's the typo, for your project game. Game type suggestions. So you can come up with any type of game that you want, but these are what I suggest. Either a platformer, such as Mega Man, Contra, Celeste, Shovel Knight, Hollow Knight, any of those type of traditional platformers. A top-down shooter, such as Hotline Miami, Enter the Gungeon, Brotato, Vampire Survivors, etc. Or an action RPG, such as Diablo, Zelda, Binding of Isaac, Path of Exile, anything like this. Okay? So, if you want to, and everyone in your group is like, oh, we just, what is it, Silksong just crashed Steam or whatever? Like, if you've all played that game and you all love it, and you just want to recreate that game as faithfully as possible within the guidelines of having to do certain functionality, that's absolutely fine. And it is actually way easier for you if you just find a game you like and try and copy that game. Not in terms of going and finding its source code, but in terms of replicating its gameplay mechanics and possibly even its art style in the game. Okay? No assets or levels may be reused from the class assignments, and gameplay must be significantly different from the assignments. You must contain at least 3 pre-built levels and have a separate final boss battle level that is only accessible after you've done all the levels. Question?
Yeah, so 3 pre-built levels, like there's games, you mentioned Hollow Knight already. Hollow Knight is like kind of one level, where it's like the map is like the whole thing. It's like, what do you mean by like, is there exceptions to that?
We'll get into that.
Okay.
Yeah, so the question was about some games don't have levels. It's just like one big continuous flowing thing. We will have levels in this game. Just, we have to, in order to make it much easier for me and other people. Must contain some sort of in-game menu, inventory selection, item selection options, etc. Must contain a level editor which allows for loading, editing, and saving of game levels. There's a level editor section I'll get to. I'm going to speed up a little bit just because we've only got about 20 minutes left. Must contain a game over screen indicating when the game has been finished. All levels, player, and game configuration options must be defined in external text files and must be editable in the level editor. Okay? So you can't hand code any levels except the boss battle in code. You can do whatever you want in code for the boss battle, because I realize sometimes there's special scripts or, you know, when this happens, oh, there's an extra health bar. That's hard to do sometimes in external text file. All assets should be gathered or created by the group project members. There should be some game scenes. There is a main menu scene that implements the main menu and options functionality. There's going to be an overworld map scene that allows for level selection or game progression. So for example, if you've ever seen or played Cuphead, Super Mario World, what I want is that there's one, this sort of gets back to your question, there's like an overworld scene, maybe you walk your character around and you get to this house and that's level 1 and you hit a button, now you're playing level 1, okay? There's a main gameplay scene that implements the game physics of the main gameplay mode. Some sort of item inventory or in-game, it's supposed to be menu, not menu scene, that is used for a relevant function. Level editor scene, so that should be stored in its same scene, and I'll demo that a little bit when we get to assignment 4, and a game over scene. So these are scenes, literally scene objects that you will create for your final project. If you deviate from this, like for example, if you have another idea for the selecting of levels that isn't necessarily a top-down overworld map, but does have the same functionality, put that in your proposal and we'll talk about it. It's fine to be creative as long as it's within scope. Now, in terms of required gameplay mechanics, I've separated this into 2 sections. One will be stuff we've already done in the assignments and stuff we haven't done in the assignments. The stuff that we haven't done in the assignments is where most of your final project grade will come from, right? It's not, is it ultra realistic 8K resolution graphics with like, dynamically generated orchestral music. That stuff, yes, it's worth a little bit, but not nearly as much as implementing the new game mechanics that are not in the assignments. So this is from, you can copy and paste all of this stuff, collisions, bullets, whatever, from your assignments, that's fine. So collisions, you have to have some sort of rectangular bounding box collisions and some collisions between the player level and geometry. If you make a game completely out of circles and you want to do that, that can replace the rectangles if you want to. Your game must contain at least 2 movement abilities with a cooldown or resource cost. So for example, in this checklist, what you will do is you will change this list to be the movements that you put into your game. So for example, maybe you have a double jump, a dash that has some invulnerability like a Dark Souls roll or something like that, some wall pack, a wall jump, a jetpack that has fuel as a resource, something like that. Now I said that this is the part that came from your assignments. This is an extension of movement, and movement is part of the assignments, okay? But this is sort of new. Bullets and weapons. At least 3 unique weapons that are usable by the player. If you have 3 bullet hit scans, like, I have a Glock, I have a revolver, and I have a shotgun, that's 1 weapon. That's not 3 different types of weapons, okay? Those are 3 guns that all shoot bullets and all do the same thing. I want 3 unique weapons. So for example, boomerang, maybe it returns to you, it goes in an arc and comes back. A shotgun where you fire several bullets, a sword, a melee weapon, a grenade, you throw it and then it explodes, has an area of effect. A shrink ray makes things smaller, a gravity gun, something like this, that's 3 unique weapons. Weapons must be swappable during gameplay via hotkey or UI. At least 1 weapon must consume ammo obtainable during gameplay. Note, weapons do not have to be standard killing weapons. You could shoot treats to animals or have a bomb that makes everyone dance when it explodes, right? As long as there are 3 separate unique ways of interacting with the environment and NPCs. I did have one cool game one that came in, it was like an animal training game, right? And they shot treats at animals, or they had, some vacuum that sucked up the pee off the floor. Like it was cool. Another one, you were at university and during the exam level, like papers were flying at you. You throw pencils at them to make, you can be as creative as you want. It doesn't have to be killing. In fact, usually most of the more interesting games are not just shoot in face until it disappears. You must have at least 3 non-player characters in the game that act as enemies or allies. Must contain basic AI such as pathfinding, shooting, patrolling, or battling with the player. We'll get into that with assignment 4. Each NPC should have a unique weapon or method for interacting with the player. You can't just have 3 different sprites for birds that fly in different patterns. No, I want 3 different things that you have to interact with differently. Hit points and damage. Players or enemies in the game should have hit points and then take damage and die. Now, any analogy to that, like 3 dog treats satiates the dog and they're no longer hungry, is also fine. It's just that hit points and damage is the easiest way to say that. Invincibility frames must be implemented for all entities that take damage. Enemy HP levels must be displayed to the user in some way. All that stuff is from assignment 4. Objects and inventory, at least 3 different items should be obtainable during the game via interaction. And then these items you actually pick up and have in an inventory to be able to use later. So I picked up a health pack. Later on, I can hit the H key to use it. It's no longer in my inventory and I've gained 20 health, for example. Health pack, sprint potion, teleportation scroll, quad damage, whatever. These items should, and again, 1 health pack that restores 20 hit points and another one that restores 40 hit points. That's not 2 different items. I want different gameplay mechanics in there. Raycasting for visibility, we're going to talk about this next week. Raycasting calculations should be used for visibility. So for example, you could have a turret that fires when an enemy enters line of sight. We're actually doing this for assignment 4, where an NPC will aggro a player when the NPC comes around a corner and now the NPC can see it. Gravity and acceleration, there must be some sort of gravity or attractor in the game that applies acceleration to the player. If you're making a top-down Diablo action RPG, so for example, if you have a assignment 3-like platformer, gravity is just obvious, right? So what I want is in every game, even if it's a gravity-based platformer, something else other than just falling. So a gravity gun, a black hole, something like that, that causes some sort of attraction or repulsion in the game. Cameras and world views, we're talking about this for assignment 4. It must have at least 2 different camera views in an interesting way. What I recommend is like, okay, you have the standard view, which is already implemented for you. The one that most people end up doing is like a mini map of the local area that shows maybe the treasures overlaid on a map or something like that. So 2 different views. You must have background music and sound effects in the game. They don't have to be great, just not ear-shriekingly, piercingly loud. That's one problem that some people have, but just some sort of music and game sounds. Assets, you cannot use any assets that were given out in the course. You do not have to create them from scratch. If you obtain assets from online, I am allowing any LLM generation of assets that you want. Just please keep in mind that those probably will not be super appropriate for the game because it's hard to make the sprite sheet that we need. Did you have a question or are you just yawning? Okay, no problem. Okay, this is the new stuff that you haven't seen yet that will be in future lectures. All the previously listed mechanics were completed in assignments, so you should be able to reuse that code for the project. The following new mechanics will be the vast majority of the marks that are given for the project. So when I say you have half the stuff done for the project, for the demo, I'm talking about half of this stuff, not half of the stuff that was already done in assignment 4. First, an options menu. So your title screen, you must have a title screen that has an options menu that allows you to change music volume, sound effects volume, game difficulty. So you can do that in any way you want, but a perfectly reasonable way to do it would just be to change the damage and hit points of things based on the difficulty. So for example, on easy, you deal twice the damage and take half the damage. On hard, you deal half the damage and take twice the damage, right? You also have to put in the ability to rebind all of the game keys. So if you were using WASD and the mouse, you don't necessarily have to rebind because you have to be able to click somewhere, but every keyboard key that you interact with the game has to be rebindable in that options screen. So if it says jump is spacebar, I have to be able to click something and set that to whatever I want. Game progression. The overworld map should somehow lock or unlock gameplay progression based on levels completed. So, okay, I'm walking in, I see level 1, I can play level 1, but level 2 has a little padlock on it. I can't go there yet until I've completed level 1. You must have the ability to save and load your game progress somehow to a file. So some file out there, if I restart the game, I don't want to be all the way back to the beginning and not have level 1 and 2 completed. So that has to be saved somehow. And auto-saving that is fine, but if you also give the ability to manually save or load, that's fine as well. Status effects. You must contain at least 3 separate status effects. They are obtainable in some way. This does not include invulnerability frames, which we'll talk about for assignment 4. So they're obtainable either via an item, an ability, a collision, etc. So for example, maybe you have a speed potion that when you drink it, for 10 seconds you run twice as fast. Quad damage, you pick it up and now you're doing more damage. Invincibility star, like from Mario, you pick up the star, now you're glowing, and you run around and anything you touch dies, right? So some sort of status effects. Also, you could think like poison, you take damage over time, etc. User interface and HUD. You must have a user interface or heads-up display which displays user information such as player health, weapons and ammo, game progression, status effects and timers, other UI element listed. And this must not be a simple IMGUI debug UI, but must look like a little bit of a polished UI on theme for the game. So if you've ever played a first-person shooter, Call of Duty, Quake, Doom, any of these things, for example, you're running around, your ammo is in the bottom left corner. That is drawn with some sprite or texture. In the middle, it might say your health, you're at 70 out of 100. None of that heads-up display, I do not want IMGUI for that. IMGUI is for your level editor, possibly for your options if you can figure out a way to make it look nice, but this is the gameplay. While you're playing the game, IMGUI should be nowhere to be seen. Okay, that is more of a debugging UI. Moving tiles. You must include some part of the level which moves, such as a platform or an elevator. So maybe you have some long gap and there's like a pit and you're waiting for this thing to go back and forth. I know it's not everyone's favorite gameplay mechanic, but it's pretty unique for gameplay programming, so I wanted to include that there as well. We haven't talked about shaders yet, but shaders are essentially just little programs that look like C code that run on the GPU. They can get as complex as you want, but for this class, they'll be very simple. And you're going to implement at least 3 different shaders. So for example, an entity might turn grayscale when they're frozen. If they walked in some radiation, now they're glowing green on the outside of them or whatever. Or alternating colors like Mario for a star effect, or they shake when there's an earthquake, etc. The only thing to note about the shaders is that you can obtain them online. That's okay. Shaders are written in GLSL. There's lots of shaders out there. I would love if you made one of the shaders yourself, but the real thing here is that, again, just like gameplay, you can't have 3 guns that fire bullets. You can't have 3 shaders that just turn them different colors. Those are the same shader, right? So if you have one that turns someone green, you can't have another one that turns them red. You can, but it won't count. That is a color-changing shader. You can find one that maybe when they step into a teleporter, it's like, and like they go all crazy. Those shaders are out there, no problem. Parallax, we'll have a lecture about that. You must incorporate parallax via multiple background layers in some way in your game. I have videos and a lecture on this. Parallax, basically, it's different elements of the background are moving at different speeds, so it makes the game look a little nicer and it looks 3D when it's actually only 2D. You can accomplish this on side scrollers or top-down shooters, and if you're having trouble with that, just let me know and we'll talk about it. Ray casting for some simple lighting effect. We'll have a lecture on this. So for example, a torch that illuminates the area around the player, or the flashlight sends light in a cone in front of the player, or something like this. Again, we'll have a lecture on that. It's not going to be super difficult, but it has to be there. Pathfinding or steering. Again, have a lecture on that. Some entities in the game must exhibit non-trivial pathfinding or smooth steering behavior. So for example, this first one is a smooth steering. Steering is exactly what you think it is. Like in a car, in order to go left, I have to steer and gradually move in that direction. You could have some sort of heat-seeking missile that's fired by a turret, and it just, instead of like going straight line, it sort of curves toward where the player is moving. Or you can put in some sort of pathfinding algorithm. So pathfinding here does not mean, it means non-trivial. So it's not just I'm trying to walk straight toward the player. So if you did 3200 with me, for example, maybe the A-star pathfinding. So, it'll actually avoid obstacles to try and get to the player. So you can do one of those 2 things. And then this is really where your game is going to stand out from other games, is the 10% extras. So 10% of the project mark is for something unique to your game that makes it special. So for example, 10% of the mark is reserved for at least one major extra or new mechanic not specifically listed above. So maybe you have some complicated lighting effect. You have a currency system that allows you to pick up money and buy some of the items in the game. Really fancy NPC AI that goes above and beyond what we talked about in class. A particle system that has really cool effects that are used in different ways. Maybe a dialogue system that lets you talk to NPCs, or experience and leveling up that somehow affects gameplay. So just like, okay, I kill an enemy, now I'm level 2, but there's nothing else, that doesn't qualify as enough, right? There has to be some unique gameplay element associated with that. All right, so those are the gameplay mechanics. They are very explicitly spelled out. And even though I've sort of boxed you into doing these things, all of those things really are a part of modern games, right? So you can make any type of game you want as long as you implement those things. But sometimes someone has a really unique idea for a game where it's like, I just can't think of how I would implement gravity into this very unique idea. Come to me and we'll talk about something else you can do instead of gravity, right? You're never super boxed in, but don't go so crazy outside the box that you can't do half of these things, okay? Just come to me and we'll talk about that. The level editor. You must contain a level editor similar to the one found in Super Mario Maker or Mega Man Maker or any of these things. I'll show a demo of that for assignment 4. It'll be pretty obvious. All of your main gameplay levels must be able to be made from within the level editor. The overworld map and the boss map may be hard-coded, but not the in-game levels, the standard levels. The level editor should operate on a grid. We'll talk about that. You can either You have to have the ability to snap to grid or not, but that should be toggleable. And the level editor must be made with mostly things from the IMGUI library. So IMGUI can load your assets. We'll talk about all that. Level editor required functionality. You must have a menu that allows you to select an existing level to edit or create a new level. Ability to select and place any texture or animation defined in the assets file into the level. Any parameters of specific entities must be editable via the level editor. So for example, whether the NPCs or the tiles block vision, movement, etc., the hit points or damage of the NPCs, the patrol points of moving tiles or NPCs, all of that stuff has to be able to be edited in the level editor. It turns out it's way easier than you might think it is, and I'll show a demo of that. Finally, you have the project report video. You have to submit a project video report or a presentation that's going to be between 15 and 20 minutes in length, containing the following information. An overview of all of the game details described in the game overview above, a description of all the extra features that you put into the game, a demonstration of all the game mechanics with at least one full level playthrough, also demo the level editor, a detailed list of all the controls for the game and instructions on how to play the game and what the objectives are. I'm going to watch every video before I play every game. Notes on anything you tried to implement that did not end up working. This must contain audio commentary and explanation and be uploaded to YouTube. If there's some extreme moral stance or technical reason why you can't put it on YouTube, it's possible we could make an exception, but it's just better if it's there. You can have it private or an unlisted video so that it's not public. You'll send the URL to me, and then you put the report video to YouTube, the YouTube video for the report on the URL on the main README. When it comes to the game, please don't make me some crazy, super hard Kaizo game that only you can finish with infinite lives. It's insane how hard people make their games. I cannot finish 3/4 of the games people submit. It's like you didn't even, I don't know if you didn't play it or you played it so much that you just became insanely good at it. But like, show it to someone who has never played it before, and if they're dying on the first screen because there's 30 turrets and 50 birds that come down and peck your eyeballs out, please just make this, like, I'm not terrible at games, but my God, the games that I get are just insanely hard. I can finish about 1/4 of them in like the 20 minutes I try and play them. Make them easy. Show off the game mechanics, but there doesn't need to be, like, try and make things move at a reasonable speed. Like, I should be able to avoid things if I really try hard. You shouldn't have these like pixel perfect jumps over lava. It's just, I say it every year. You go back and watch this video from last year, I say the same thing, and people still, half the games are impossible. I finished Dark Souls 3. I'm not terrible, but I can't beat your games. It's nuts. It's nuts. All right, so that's that. And then, oh yeah, the trailer is just like a 2 to 3 minute trailer showing off gameplay mechanics. I think what I am going to do for the final report video, I haven't done this in past years, I've wanted to, I've just been a little bit lazy, is that I'm going to give you a PowerPoint presentation that has all the slides in it, like, here are our movement abilities. And then on the next slide, it says, insert video clip here, right? So what you can do is just take that PowerPoint presentation. It has everything you need to show me in it. Then on the insert clips and screenshots part here, you'll just record a little clip with OBS or whatever your favorite preferred thing is, stick the video in there, make it autoplay when you get to that slide, and then you just give me that presentation. right? And then you record that presentation. That way, at least I'll be sure that there was the possibility of you demonstrating all the things, right? Because yes, it's a very long checklist of things, and sometimes you just forgot to put something in the video. But if I give you that like PowerPoint thing, maybe all the presentations sort of look similar now, and there's less uniqueness in the presentations, but it certainly beats a 20-minute presentation where the person who's talking spends 2.5 minutes trying to compile the program. And like most of the presentation videos that I get are not edited at all. They're just someone playing it for 20 minutes and like clicking back and forth to like Notepad with the checklist stuff, which isn't bad. I don't take off marks for that, but it would be good if I gave you that. I think you don't need to use it, but at least it shows you like what I'm sort of looking for. So please, when you make these videos, I know you're not like, it's not like a Scorsese film, right? You don't need the best editing or special effects or whatever. I just want, my only requests for that are that hopefully whoever did the thing talks about it, but sometimes people don't have good mics and it's like, just listen to everyone's microphone, or if someone says, listen, I don't have a way to record this right now, I'm out of the country or whatever, it's okay if one person does most of the talking. You don't need to all be in the same room. I'm not expecting a video of you standing in front of a PowerPoint presentation. Please don't, I mean, if you do that, sure, but like just a screen recording is fine that you're talking over. All I ask is that the audio quality be somewhat reasonable so I can hear you. If you have like air conditioning or a giant fish tank or your dog yapping, try and edit that out if possible. It's incredibly distracting sometimes to try. So it's not a lot of the grade, but some of the grade is like how well made the video was on top of all the things that you did. So it's not strictly for informational purposes. Some of it is, okay, how much effort did they spend on this video? I'm sure there's probably something I left out. Feel free to post in the Discord or send me an email. Anything that I left out, I will be happy to put on Brightspace. In terms of, I already mentioned strategies for divvying up the project work, but please, even though you have about 2.5 weeks to do this proposal, don't wait to like form the groups. At least get your groups together as soon as possible. Try and be civil when you talk about the game ideas. If one person has an idea for a puppy petting simulator and the other person has like Diablo 5, try and make that work somehow, right? Maybe it's Diablo looking, but it's like puppies are shooting fireballs. Just so, you know, I've never had a problem with people like disagreeing too much on the game idea. And when it comes to marking it, it's impossible for me to give a very detailed marking scheme for the project. So much of it is this unfortunate, intangible intuition about like how the game feels to play, how the game looks overall, how much I enjoyed it, how well you explained it. So while for the assignments, I love to give like 3% for this thing, it's very difficult for me to do that for the project. And when I give back the final project grades, it's very unlikely that you get something other than like a multiple of 5, right? I'm very rarely giving like 91.5%, like I can't justify that. But I could justify like 100% versus 95% or something. And typically, the grades on the projects are very well done. And if you've done everything that I asked, and your project video, I can at least understand the voices, then you're getting a 95, right? Just do all the things, and that's about it.